Shah Abbas realized that in order to retain absolute control over his empire without antagonizing the Qizilbash, he needed to create reforms that reduced the dependency that the Shah had on their military support. Part of these reforms was the creation of the third force within the aristocracy, but even more important in undermining the authority of the Qizilbash was the introduction of the royal corps into the military. This military force would serve the Shah only and eventually consisted of 4 separate branches, Shahs. These were 12,000 strong and built up from the small group of Kirchis that Shah Abbas had inherited from his predecessor. The Shahs, or friends of the king, were Qizilbash tribesmen who had forsaken their tribal allegiance for allegiance to the Shah alone. Ghulams. Tahmasp had started introducing huge amounts of Georgian, Circassian and Armenian slaves from the Caucasus, appointing them either in the harem, the royal household, military and civil administration. Shah Abbas expanded this program significantly and eventually created a force of 15,000 Ghilem cavalrymen and 3,000 Ghilem royal bodyguards. They would become the elite soldiers of the Safavid armies, like the Ottoman Janissary. Musketeers, realizing the advantages that the Ottomans had because of their firearms, Shah Abbas was at pains to equip both the Kirchi and the Ghilem soldiers with up-to-date weaponry. More importantly, for the first time in Iranian history, a substantial infantry corps of musketeers, Tufangkais, numbering 12,000, was created. Artillery corps, with the help of Westerners. He also formed an artillery corps of 12,000 men, although this was the weakest element in his army. According to Sir Thomas Herbert, who accompanied the British embassy to Persia in 1628, the Persians relied heavily on support from the Europeans in manufacturing cannons. It wasn't until a century later, when Nadir Shah became the commander-in-chief of the military, that sufficient effort was put into modernizing the artillery corps, and the Persians managed to excel and become self-sufficient in the manufacturing of firearms. Despite the reforms, the Qizilbash would remain the strongest and the most effective element within the military, accounting for more than half of its total strength. But the creation of this large standing army, that, for the first time in Safavid history, was serving directly under the Shah, significantly reduced their influence, and perhaps any possibilities for the type of civil unrest that had caused havoc during the reign of the previous Shahs.